Tonight on CFTK-TV News, the Prince Rupert RCMP are again looking for a wanted man, the Terrace RCMP are seeking an unknown bear spray suspect, and we look at the aftermath of a hostage-saving raid in the Israel-Hamas war.
Northwest BC's only television news team. We are CFTK-TV News.
Good evening, I'm Cale Maslin, and here's what's making news in the Northwest and beyond. Like yesterday, the Prince Rupert RCMP are again trying to find out where a wanted man is currently located. This time, the wanted man goes by the name of George DeWin Green, and he is wanted due to charges of assault, breach of release order, uttering threats, and failure to comply with order. DeWin Green has been described as a 24-year-old Asian male, measuring in at about 5'5", weighing close to 122 pounds, and also having features like brown eyes, short black hair, in addition to a visible scar on his right cheek. If you happen to have any knowledge as to where he might be located or know someone else who's aware of where he is, you are asked to call the Prince Rupert RCMP at 250-624-2136. Along with the Prince Rupert RCMP, Terrace's police are also seeking to find someone, albeit without knowing the suspected perpetrator's exact identity. The Terrace RCMP are currently trying to get help from the public in order to discover the name of a suspect involved in a bear spray incident from September of last year. This incident occurred outside of a McDonald's, and after a person got sprayed by the substance, the restaurant had to close down for the afternoon. Despite the good fortune of the victim or anyone else not suffering any injuries due to the incident, the Terrace police have had some trouble trying to properly identify the lone suspect in the case. Anyone who may have a clue as to who the suspect is via the Terrace RCMP provided photos of the person is asked to call them at 250-638-7400. The wildfire that burnt down 4 homes while also damaging other properties near Fort Nelson is currently classified as under control. The BC Wildfire Service said in a statement that at 123 square kilometers in size, the fire is not expected to jump beyond its existing perimeter. The blaze started during the previous month and ended up coming within a few kilometers of the town of Fort Nelson, and it forced about 4,700 residents to leave on short notice. Crews were able to gain the upper hand on the fire thanks to both rain and cooler temperatures. U.S. and Israeli officials met following a dramatic military raid over the weekend. U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken says a proposal is on the table, waiting for a response from Hamas. Now we're seeing the harrowing images of the raid that freed hostages held by Hamas and the touching reunions with their grateful families. ABC's Tom Sophie Burridge has more.
In a hellish gun battle, this is the moment Israeli commandos stormed a residential building in Gaza in broad daylight. Breaching an apartment, finding those 3 male hostages. Shlomi Ziv on that bed, holding up his arms, shouting, "Look, look, they're here." The other 2 nearby. You see sheer terror in their faces, then shouting their names, Almog, Andrei, and a sudden explosion, frightening the hostages. An Israeli soldier telling them, "Everything's all right, we've come to rescue you, be calm." Then the dangerous escape with bullets flying around them. You see 2 of the hostages running for their lives. Tonight, sources telling ABC News leading up to the raid, some Israeli special forces were disguised as Palestinian refugees looking for a place to live, lying in wait in position before they were given the go command Saturday morning. The IDF saying it launched airstrikes after its troops came under fire, those strikes taking a terrible toll. The Hamas-run health ministry saying at least 270 Palestinians were killed, but Israel disputing that, saying about 100 were killed. Munira, who lives nearby, pleading for peace.
We have hearts. We are a human being. We want peace to be all over the area.
The Israeli call sign when the hostages were freed, "We got the diamonds." Soldiers then escorting them onto a chopper with a high five before they were flown out of Gaza. The IDF also rescuing 26-year-old Noah Agamani from a separate apartment. You'll remember this video that shocked the world, showing Noah screaming, taken by terrorists on a motorcycle. Today, back in the arms of her dad and reunited with her mum, who has terminal cancer. Each relative cherishing the hugs after 8 months of agony for loved ones they feared they might never see again. Almog Mirjan's family almost in disbelief. Tragically, his father dying just hours before he was freed. A relative kissing the 22-year-old's head. And this from his mum.
Yesterday was my birthday, and my wish came through.
Coming up next is a look at a new plan from BC Hydro. Welcome back. BC Hydro introduced a new plan last week that offers its customers a way to save money on their bills. It's not for everyone, but certain customers could reap the rewards. CTV's Becca Clarkson explains who could benefit the most.
These are some of the appliances that cost the most money to run. But washing your whites and getting sauce off those plates could cost less if you shift when you hit the start button.
Not everyone's using electricity the same way or at the same times. So we designed this rate so that people could have more choice and a chance for more savings.
BC Hydro says those who want to give it a go can save 5 cents for each hour of power use between 11 p.m. and 7 a.m. But from 4 to 9 p.m., there's a 5-cent surcharge for peak hour power use. Outside those times, it's business as usual.
You know, you may not get the 5-cent bonus, but you don't get the 5-cent penalty either.
So, how low could your hydro bill go? Well, that depends. Firat Ataman signed up after using BC Hydro's online estimator tool and learning he could save $200 a year.
Then you start asking yourself the question, okay, what can I do to save even more by changing some of the behaviors?
BC Hydro says the biggest savers will be people who work shifts outside the usual 9 to 5 or from home. Those who regularly do 2 loads of laundry a week could save up to $25 annually through this rate. And electric vehicle owners, like Firat, could end the year with an extra $125.
Having an electric vehicle, it's really easy for me to change that electrical use.
But this rate may not work for people living in condos and apartments, since their energy use is lower than those in detached homes. Don't forget strata rules and noise restrictions. You may not even be allowed to run your washers late at night. BC Hydro says the new rate option will free up some system capacity and help it meet power demands during peak times.
Capacity is like the number of lanes on the highway. We don't need all 10 lanes all the time, but we need to build them so we're able to meet the rush hour demand.
If you're on the fence, you can always take this rate for a test ride.
You can opt in or out at any time, literally with the click of a button.
Becca Clarkson, CTV News, Vancouver.
Now to how financial or romance scams can turn some victims into criminals. Officials are trying to crack down on investment fraud, sounding the alarm on money mules who may unknowingly be helping criminals do their dirty work. CTV's Isabella Zavarisi explains.
From phony job offers and romance scams to daily text and audio spam, fraudsters are constantly finding ways to try to scam us.
There's nobody out there right now, I would suggest to you, compared to a few years ago, who can't say they haven't received these.
And now, law enforcement is warning about a new tactic.
We want to protect British Columbians, trying to stop the bleeding, so to speak.
Financial damage done by foreign crime groups who Mounties and the BC Securities Commission say are increasingly targeting people in offshore investment frauds, often tricking them into being money mules.
What they may not realize, the money mules may not realize, is that they're transferring money and crypto sometimes on behalf of criminals.
Investigations are underway into hundreds of thousands of dollars laundered this way. The victims may be tricked or bribed, or sometimes agree to do the money transfer. This can happen through everything from fake job postings to crypto investment scams.
And then use the wallet address deposit into these fake websites for investments.
So there is no clear, easy solution to this. We're not going to arrest and charge our way out of this problem.
The advice is familiar. Ignore get-rich-quick messages on social media or unsolicited email, and never transfer cash for someone you've never met.
Just don't reply, or you just don't answer that email. Whatever that looks like, you're going to be able to stop it right there.
10 alleged money mules in BC are in their crosshairs. Mounties have sent warning letters that they could face criminal charges if they keep moving money. Isabella Zavarisi, CTV News.
He was just 15 years old when he was shot dead, an innocent victim of a gun battle on Broadway. Alfred Wong was in a car with his parents when bullets started flying, and now 6 years after Alfred's death, an Ontario man is on trial for his murder. CTV's Ben Nesbitt was in the BC Supreme Court to hear the prosecution's case.
Dressed in a navy blue suit, Kane Carter stood tall in the prisoner's box and calmly entered not guilty pleas to the 3 charges against him. Now, for the next several months, Crown will attempt to prove beyond a reasonable doubt to the jury that Carter was the man who fired the shots that killed 2 people, including an innocent teenager. It happened on the evening of January 13th, 2018. Crown says 15-year-old Alfred Wong was in the back seat of his parents' car as they drove home from dinner near East Broadway and Ontario streets when he was struck by a single bullet in the chest. He underwent emergency surgery but died a few days later.
My parents and I will always love him dearly, and his death will leave a void in our hearts.
23-year-old Kevin Whiteside was also killed that night. At the time, police said Whiteside was in the area to murder Matthew Navis Rivas, both embroiled in ongoing gang conflict. As Navis Rivas left Indochine restaurant, officers say Whiteside shot at him. A second shooter, who Crown believed was Carter, fired back, striking both Whiteside and Wong as his family drove past. Carter admits he flew from Ontario to the Lower Mainland in late 2017 and began renting a Surrey apartment, and that he flew back to Ontario a week after the shooting. He was eventually arrested in that province in 2022. Crown says investigators found a black van they believe to be the getaway vehicle in the underground parking of Carter's Surrey rental condo. They say DNA matching Carter's, as well as 3 fired bullet cases, were found inside of it. A third victim was struck by a bullet during the incident. He's expected to testify later in the trial that's scheduled to run until late November. Ben Nesbitt, CTV News, Vancouver.
Turning to tonight's weather, the north coast will get some rain and a low at 8 degrees. The Terrace-Kitimat area is set to deal with periods of rain and a low at 7 degrees. And the Bulkley Valley and Lakes District is also likely to see some periods of rain, but with a low at 6 degrees. On the north coast, the next week or so should consist of essentially just clouds and rain, but maybe a little sun, and a high shifting from 12 to 14 degrees. In the Terrace-Kitimat area, the week for them will include various bits of rain and clouds too, as well as some sun, plus a high moving from 14 to 19 degrees. And in the Bulkley Valley and Lakes District, their week will see a little bit more sun, but still plenty of rain and clouds, and the high will bounce between 14 and 19 degrees too. Checking out the highways now, visit Drive BC for the latest and up-to-date conditions, and as always, drive safe out there. On Highway 16, there is utility work, bridge maintenance, construction work, roadside brushing, paving operations, a geotechnical investigation, and several special events. Highway 37 has some roadside brushing, paving operations, and frost heaves, some road sweeping on the Nishka Highway, and the Telegraph Creek Road has both some muddy sections and frost heaves. And this is what the roads were looking like this afternoon around the region from the view of the province's highway cams. Still to come, the Western Canadian premiers recently had their yearly meetup. Welcome back. Affordability and housing were top priority for Canada's Western premiers gathering to address the biggest problems of the day. While they shared strategies, they also expressed frustration about how the federal government is treating both Ontario and Quebec. CTV's Rob Buffum now on a fresh wave of Western alienation.
Affordability was a focus for the 7 Western premiers gathering in the Yukon over the past 2 days. Premier Eby acknowledging high house prices as an ongoing challenge.
That's why housing is our major government priority. That is the big challenge for young people, actually attainable middle-income housing.
Eby pointed to efforts to get municipalities on side with housing targets, but blamed immigration as putting a strain on BC, and the need for Ottawa to step up in support of the province the same way it has Ontario and Quebec.
How frustrated we are to see the money being showered down on Quebec and Ontario, and us scrabbling around for what's left over. It's not acceptable. It is not okay.
The theme, Western alienation, familiar. The catalyst of today's frustration, news that the feds have offered Quebec $750 million to defray costs linked with immigration in that province.
That announcement today with Quebec, frankly, is the straw that broke this camel's back.
EB used the moment to make a similar demand for BC.
I look forward to the call from the Prime Minister to share with us the details of their immigration funding for British Columbia on a per capita basis, the exact same as Quebec got today.
Alberta's Premier Danielle Smith weighed in as well, noting thousands of Ukrainians who've sought relief in her province.
It does seem to me they need to give us the tools. If they want us to be able to settle newcomers, then they need to support us with the finances to do that.
All the premiers agreed on the need for Ottawa to fund infrastructure to assist resource projects like hydrogen and to lower costs tied to trade within Canada, as the country's Western leaders made a public pitch for funding from their federal counterpart. Robert Buffum, CTV News, Victoria.
There are plenty of objections to the federal government's plans to change the capital gains tax, with the concerns mainly coming from doctors and small business owners who say that this increase will hurt them. The finance minister presented her government's plan to Parliament. Here's CTV's Mike Lake-O'Toole with more.
The federal government has been trying to make the case that the new inclusion rate on capital gains will only affect 0.13% of Canadians. And the Liberals say it's about creating fairness for all. However, there is something else at play here.
Taxing capital gains is not an inherently partisan idea.
Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland pointed to past Conservative governments under John Diefenbaker and Brian Mulroney, who she says moved towards tax fairness. But while saying this isn't a partisan issue, Freeland added this.
I do think this is a moment when Canadians should be watching closely what happens in the House and watching closely to see how all MPs vote on this, I would say, defining measure.
The measure is to hike the inclusion rate on capital gains from 50% to 67% for people earning more than $250,000 in profit on the sale of assets or investments. Many believe the Liberals separated this from the main budget bill to put the Conservatives on the spot.
Their hope is if they can draw the Conservatives into a direct debate on this question, that maybe they can skew a little bit towards where the majority of voters are.
A Conservative leader, Pierre Poilievre, has not said how his party would vote on this because the legislation hasn't been public until this point. However, a statement from his office called it a tax, adding, "Doctors, small business owners, and Canadians saving for their retirements have all raised opposition to Trudeau's next tax hike. But he is desperate to pay for the $61 billion in new inflationary spending announced in the latest budget." The NDP is already lining up to support the changes to capital gains, despite the politics at play.
The fact that they're not only moving forward on this, but then separating it out of the budget to make it a wedge issue for the Conservatives just highlights that they want to make this a political point.
A political point or not, it'll all come to a head on a vote on this bill, which could happen as soon as tomorrow. Mike Lake-O'Toole, CTV News, Ottawa.
Police in Toronto are investigating a 4-alarm fire that has destroyed a historic church. Toronto's deputy fire chief says the 116-year-old building has been completely gutted, along with some priceless artwork inside. CTV's Raheem Ladani reports.
Shaken and saddened, seeing what's left of their church, parishioners are remembering their countless connections to St. Anne's Anglican.
I was married here, and my children were all baptized and confirmed. I've been doing the history and art tours for years. I just can't believe it's all gone.
Nestled on Gladstone Avenue, off Dundas Street in Little Portugal, the church had been serving the neighborhood since it was built more than a century ago in 1908. It was just before 8 a.m., ahead of Sunday service, when firefighters responded to a 4-alarm blaze, arriving to see thick black smoke rip through the place of worship. The flames were eventually doused, but not before the roof and dome collapsed, leaving only the 4 walls standing.
We will try to salvage whatever we can. It will probably take some time for us to do that. We are also working with our own leadership to determine what's the state of those exterior walls. Ideally, if we can save them, we will.
Members of the church could be seen carrying away robes worn by the clergy and a box of records that appear not to be burned. What is gone for certain, though, are the iconic works of art, many done by the Group of 7, which were the only known religious works painted by the revered Canadian collective.
Some of the other artwork in there was done by some women who were close collaborators with the Group of 7 but didn't receive the same amount of fame, and so that's always felt special to me, so that will be missed.
As investigators try to determine what sparked the fire, members of the congregation are hopeful the church will be rebuilt.
And now we turn our attention to the stock markets. The Canadian dollar is down 1/100 of a cent, the price of gold is down 40 cents, oil is up 16 cents, natural gas is up 22 cents, aluminum is down $6. In Toronto, the TSX is down 182.42 points, the Venture Index is down 9.78, in New York, the Dow Jones is down 120.62, and NASDAQ is up 151.02. Still ahead, a rodeo in Oregon saw a bull get loose. Welcome back. Now to wild footage from an Oregon rodeo on the weekend. A bull jumped from the ring over the fence and ran through the crowd, injuring 4 people. ABC's Trevor Alt reports.
We have another victim from the bull.
This morning, 4 people are recovering after a bull escaped from an arena during a packed rodeo event over the weekend.
Trampled a couple of people.
This video shows the chaos unfolding as the bull, named Party Bus, jumped an arena barrier and charged onto the rodeo grounds.
It jumped the fence and I was like, this is going immediately wrong. Everyone started panicking, screaming.
Panicked attendees seen running for safety.
Multiple people had gone under risers, gone inside the porta potties, gone inside the concession stands, trying to get out of the way.
The announcer immediately calling for help.
I was immediately panicking and thought that somebody was going to get completely trampled.
The bull running over a garbage can and then charging a woman, flinging her into the air twice. Sisters Rodeo Association saying in a statement the bull was secured next to the livestock holding pens by our rodeo pickup men and immediately placed into a pen. We are grateful for the rapid professional response of our arena pickup men, rodeo staff, and local first responders who were able to prevent the situation from being worse.
A community fire hall destroyed by the Elephant Hill wildfire was replaced 7 years after the massive southern interior blaze. Daryl Hart, the Lou Lake Fire Department chief, said his team overcame many obstacles since the fire, from relying on bottled water and porta potties to not treading on cold winter days. The new hall has a heated 3-bay garage, a designated gear room, a training room, chief's office, and meeting room. Since 2018, the department used a building constructed at the old hall site, which the Thompson-Nicola Regional District intends to keep operating as a second fire hall for the community north of Cache Creek. That's all of our news for now. From everyone at CFTK-TV News, I'm Cale Maslin. Thanks for watching.